5 times Sonic caught himself before calling them mom and dad, and one time he didn't hold back. Chapter 6. Judge Penelope Ramirez rarely had a full schedule in her courtroom, even though her jurisdiction spanned 3 countries, and that was how she liked it. Rural Fontana was such a far cry from the hustle chaos of the city she left behind 5 years ago. Whole weeks could go by without an assault case, or even a robbery. Instead, she generally spent her time settling land border disputes, quarrels between neighboring ranchers, officiating weddings, and meditating divorces. It wasn't work that garnered headlines, and that suited her just fine, which was why she was surprised when her secretary buzzed to tell her that Green Hills Sheriff wanted a moment of her time. She saw her supervisor's map she'd been examining down and glanced at the speakerphone over a tortoiseshell glasses.
Did he say what it's regarding, Julie?
No, ma'am.
Well, make an appointment, I suppose. I think we've got a slot open tomorrow before lunch.
I was hoping you could squeeze me in now, Your Honor.
She blinked. He'd driven 2 towns over on the hope that she'd see him. Whatever it was about had to be important. She began folding up the maps.
All right, Julie, send him in.
Sheriff Wachowski had his hat in his hands as he entered her chambers, eyes roaming the space.
Nice place you got here.
Oh yes, we were just featured in Celandi's Paneling Monthly.
Ramirez slid the maps back in their Desiné Manula folder and set it aside.
What can I do for you, Sheriff?
He closed the door behind him and took a few steps closer, stopping just short of the pair of chairs reserved for visitors. He rocked on his heels, nervous tension radiating off of him.
Quite a big fever, I'm hoping.
I'm not granting your deputy's request for a permit to throw a block party out on Aqua Lake.
That got the lawman to crack a smile, dimples showing as he shook his head.
Oh no, not that. It's something more personal.
She tilted her head, considering him. They had a good working relationship, but she could count the times they'd spoken in person on one hand. And now he was asking for a personal favor? To say she was intrigued was an understatement.
Please sit down, Sheriff.
Tom, you can call me Tom.
All right, Tom. What's this big favor?
He opened his mouth, then shut it again, repeated the action, shifted in his seat, drummed his fingers on the hat now resting in his lap.
This past summer, do you remember the blackout?
Well, it's hard to forget a thing like that.
Right, and, the tornado that torched down the main street a day or so later?
It was all over the news.
Yeah, of course. So, back when all that was happening, my wife and we found a boy.
A boy?
He found us, really, from the woods. We don't know how long he was out there, but it was a while.
Ramirez's glasses slipped down to her nose, and she pushed them back into place with one finger.
Naturally, you reported this to the proper authorities?
Technically, I am the authority. It's a unique situation. He'd already been through so much. We just wanted to keep him safe.
And it never occurred to you that this child could have a family somewhere looking for him?
No, he doesn't have any other family, I mean. He's a refugee, undocumented. The family he won't go into detail, but we don't think they're alive.
And you don't want to get the ICE involved because?
Because he belongs with us.
The sheriff was sitting up straight now, hands gripping his knees. For a long moment they sat, spine stiff, shoulders squared, neither one blinking. At last, she unfolded her hands, laying them flat on the desk.
You realize what you're asking is legally dubious at best, and criminal at worst?
In my experience, what's legal and what's right don't always sync up. If I thought we could do this 100% by the book, we would. But it's just not possible.
And why is that, Tom?
He looked away at the art on the walls, at the floor, before reaching around to pull his cell phone from his back pocket.
Because he's not from around here.
Yes, we've established that.
He was now unlocking his phone, scrolling with his thumb.
No, I mean you really not from around here.
The phone was laid on the desk, facing her, and she pulled it delicately closer. She squinted at the photo he pulled up, shook her head, adjusted her glasses, and looked again. On screen was something. Bright blue, covered in fur, with a short muzzle, big eyes, and even a bigger smile, which it was aiming at the camera as it rested a baseball bat over one shoulder.
What exactly am I looking at, Sheriff?
Our boy.
You're serious? Because if this is intended to be a joke, I'm not falling for the humor.
I'm not. That's our boy, Your Honor.
He stretched out an arm, swiped right with a finger. In the next photo, the creature was sitting at what appeared to be the counter of a diner. He was gaping at a sky-high stack of pancakes, while a woman she recognized as the sheriff's wife beamed beside him. In the photo after that, he was seated on the hood of a squad car, smirking behind sunglasses while the sheriff's deputy stood next to him, with a cardboard sign that read, "Take your hedgehog to work day." Next photo looked to have been taken at the Green Hills High School homecoming game. The sheriff's arm peeked into the foreground as he held the camera out to fit everyone in the frame. His wife was on his left, and between them, with a blue arm wrapped around both their necks, and a smile wider than his face, was the blue-furred creature. On and on he scrolled, each picture too clear, too well integrated to be the product of digital photo manipulation. And even if it were, to what end? She held out a hand to pause his scrolling and picked up the phone. The light was dim in the picture, but the cameras were so good at these days that images were still crisp. Wachowski's face was out of frame, but on the broad shoulder was unmistakable. And pressed up against that shoulder was a fuzzy blue cheek. As the creature slept, carefully she zoomed in. The plaid shirt had a small dark stain just underneath the creature's mouth. He apparently slept so soundly he had been drooling. And all at once, she didn't see a creature any longer.
You really are serious.
She said again, all the former sharpness gone from her tone, as she handed him back the phone.
I know it's asking a lot, but please, can you help us?
She locked her gaze with his, and knew exactly what her answer would be.
You told her?
Matt, I had to. She was ready to get on the phone with the ICE. I had to make her understand why that would be a mistake.
Tom kept his voice hushed. Sonic had already said his goodnights and gone upstairs, but that didn't mean he couldn't wander back down for a drink and overhear. Maddie untied the sash of her bathrobe and slipped it off, tossing it on the closed chair in the corner before getting into bed next to her husband.
And that worked?
I think so. She said she'd be sending us a packet, whatever that means. I don't think it's code for going behind our backs to the men in black.
Still, it made me more nervous enough to letting him go to school, taking him around town.
But look how great that's been going.
I know, but that's because it's Green Hills. The people in this town trust you, us, so they understand. Beyond that, she'd heard about the tornado story they ran with, right?
Yeah?
Right, so did you correct her?
It didn't seem relevant.
So what exactly did you tell her?
What I thought I had to. Nothing that wasn't true.
And she believed you?
Yeah, well, after I showed her the pics on my phone.
You what?
Again, I had to. If she's going to help us do this, she's going to have to see him sooner or later. Better to freak her out now than later.
And how freaked out was she exactly?
Less than I expected.
Really?
Really. Maybe about the same amount of freaked out you were when you first saw him.
Huh. Maybe I'll like her then.
It's a start anyway. We'll keep our eyes on the mail, figure out where we go from here.
When do we turn?
I was hoping to have a solid plan in the first place. I don't want to get his hopes up if this all turns out to be impossible.
Okay.
She kissed him lightly on the mouth.
Love you, Tom.
Love you too, Maddie.
He cupped her face in one hand, returning the kiss, and then rolled over to turn off the light. As he was lying back down, he felt her snake one arm around his torso, pressing her chest against his back.
This isn't going to be impossible, right?
Not if we have anything to say about it.
For 2 weeks they watched the mail closely, but no packet arrived. Via text during school hours they discussed whether or not it was worth asking again.
Maybe she can figure out a way around the red tape.
She could at least have sent a letter or called or something if that was the case.
Might not be good to leave a paper trail if that trail's gonna land someone in jail.
I guess.
This was always going to be a long shot, Mans.
I know.
Love you. Pizza tonight?
Absolutely.
So they pushed down their worries and worked to stay in the present. Seeing as how the present involved their very first Christmas together, it was easy to live in the moment, especially when those moments involved tree chopping and cookie swapping, and introduction to Tom's parents. The former Sheriff Wachowski and his wife had been eased into the situation over months of phone conversations and texted photos, and while Tom assured Maddie that they were ready to meet Greenhouse resident alien, she was still nervous as the holiday drew nearer. When they showed up at the door on Christmas morning with an SUV filled with presents for a hedgehog, who quickly forgot any and all shyness he had, Maddie fought back tears. When they asked her if there might be babysitting opportunities in the future, she had to duck into the kitchen to wipe her tears away. As they gathered in the foyer at the end of the day, Sonic zipping around fetching coats and scarves, Thomas Wachowski Sr. clapped his son on the shoulder.
So we'll see you in February?
Absolutely. Make an extra big batch of that game day chili.
Joey?
Best chili in the Tri-Country area.
One of the only things this one cooks that isn't on a grill.
Can I put it on a hot dog?
Son, you can put it on anything you like. You should come by early. We can show the boy the horses.
You have horses?
It's more fun to ride 'em when there's no snow on the ground. But they never say no to visitors.
I can ride them?
Don't see why not.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh!
Told him about the horses, didn't you?
If you wanted to bring him before the Super Bowl, you wouldn't hear any complaints from us.
That sounds wonderful, Rosie. Sonic, slow down, baby. It's time to say goodbye.
Huh? Oh, right. Sorry. It was nice to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Wachowski.
I don't think we need to be quite so formal, son. We're family after all.
The smile faltered on the blue furry face. Above him, Tom and Maddie exchanged glances. Even 6 months in, even after Tom and Son's talk in November, the boy was still calling them by their first names or the nicknames he'd given them. If the older couple were expecting Grandpa and Grandma, they might be disappointed. Tom opened his mouth to say what he didn't know, but then his father was crouching down to be at Sonic's level.
Tell you what, son. When Tom was a boy, all his friends calls me Big T, and his mama, Miss Rosie. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, okay.
And how do you feel about Hans?
I love them. They're the best.
And when she opened her arms, he immediately hopped into them. Maddie had to swipe her eyes again, while Tom wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Her heart was so full that night, that after they tucked Sonic into bed, she texted Rachel. After 6 months of silence, the sisters reached a truce, and she brought Jojo to visit over New Year's. It only took one afternoon of Jojo and Sonic bonding over sledding and snowball fights for Rachel to warm up to the idea that maybe Tom had been right, and that the blue hedgehog wasn't such a menace after all. The Wachowskis rode at that holiday high all through January, and as February settled in, Ramirez and the packet drifted further to the backs of their minds. Who had the time anyway? There were PTA meetings to attend to, science projects to construct, books about boy demigods to read at bedtime. There were also teenage mood swings to deal with, and runs taken with the smartwatch conveniently forgotten at home. and the occasional calls from the principal when he got too excited or upset and something got broken. The attic stairs got slammed and angry voices echoed on either side. But they always wound up together on the couch at the end of the day, even if Sonic sometimes chose to spend the time playing Pokemon on his second-hand Game Boy instead of watching sitcoms with them. And on the flip side, there were Super Bowl parties and boys climbing their front steps to ask if he could hang out. Play was apparently less cool, but sometimes it slipped out, and a school food drive that their hedgehog made sure his homeroom won. They were getting their routine down to an art, and sometime in March, Maddie made the observation that things felt quite a bit calmer as compared to the fall, since the emotional ups and downs of their first few months under one roof seemed to be smoothing into gentle hills instead of sharp peaks and valleys. She could count the number of times Sonic had gotten upset enough to spark on one hand. He was coming to them more and more for help when he needed it. Movie night was now so old hat, so normal, that he no longer vibrated with excitement on Friday night. Instead, he snuggled in between them on the couch with a look of contentment that never failed to melt her heart. March thawed into April, April melted into May. The blooming bare grass ushered in junior league tryouts, and after that, they didn't have time to think about anything other than juggling practice schedules with homework and learning how to get grass stains out of jersey material, and whose turn it was to host the post-win pizza party, which was why, when the package finally arrived on Tuesday in late May, it got unceremoniously dumped on the kitchen counter as the three of them scrambled to get out the door to practice after school. And on the counter it stayed unnoticed until the weekend, when Maddie did her weekly sweep off all surfaces routine. Arms full, it slipped out of her grasp, only to be caught by a blue blur who had been on his way to the fridge.
What's this?
Not sure, kiddo. Who is it addressed to?
Donut Lord from some judge. Work stuff, baby?
Her eyebrows shot skyward. It could have been 6 months after the fact? She glanced down, read the name on the return address. The hair on the back of her neck stood on end.
Oh, yeah, probably.
She cleared her throat, covered like it was seasonal allergies, and not the rising panic that was making her chest seize. When she spoke again, she was proud of how bored she sounded.
Case files or something. I'll take it.
He handed it over, completely oblivious to its life-changing contents, finished his quest for chocolate milk, and left her alone in the kitchen. Setting the rest of the mail back down, she undid the silver fastener and peeked inside. State of Montana, Department of Health and Human Services, petition of adoption. Quietly, hands shaking, she closed it up again, then waiting until she heard the attic stairs creak closed. She took it to the bedroom as casually as she could manage.
So this is it.
Yep.
There's a lot more of it than I was expecting.
The Wachowskis were sitting on their bed, with the rest of their lines laid out across their bedspread. Tom kept picking up individual sheets of paper and putting them back down. The evening had been unbearably slow. Via text, Maddie had conveyed the information to Tom, and then the two of them had done their absolute hardest to pretend everything was normal. In Tom's opinion, the boy deserved Oscars, because the 14-year-old went to bed suspicious of nothing. Still, they'd locked the bedroom door just in case.
Can't say they're not thorough.
No, I cannot. Support groups for adoptive parents. Can you imagine showing up for something like that?
Her gaze fell upon another pamphlet that read, Parenting Children and Youth Who Have Experienced Abuse or Neglect, and her chest tightened.
Might not be a bad idea, actually.
Fair point.
He's not. He's doing okay, right? All things considered.
Absolutely. Look, build confidence. Who's cheering louder than every other parent at his games?
Yeah, but
Express support. Be consistent. Allow them to express their feelings. I think we've been doing all right by him, even without a piece of paper telling us so. Could we be doing better? Absolutely, always. That's what this is all for, right?
Right.
So, know anyone who can afford to a birth certificate?
As it turns out, Carl was the guy. He believed the Blue Devil deserves to be counted as one of them, so they decided not to ask questions. It was a bit awkward explaining why he was leaving the house as Sonic and Tom were coming back from a run. Maddie fumbled through an improvised story about swapping recipes and quickly distracted the hedgehog with homework talk. And she wasn't the only one playing the game of distract the boy. Tom was doing his own form of decking and weaving around the house. There were interviews and favors to drop off and collect. They were seeing a notary at least once a week, and there were only so many times the sheriff could tell his errand partner, "Not this time, bud." Each time the pointed ears dropped a little lower, and he was running out of treats to bring home to ease the guilt. 3 weeks in, and Sonic stopped asking to tag along. The initial process took weeks, which, considering how long it took to actually get started, felt like no time at all. With each document submitted for a consideration, they held their breath until they could release it. It's a sigh of relief when they were approved for the next step, and then did it all over again. All the while, their boy, the one they were jumping through hoops to make truly and officially theirs, was watching as they put their phones away when he walked in the room, sometimes mid-conversation, watching as they snapped their laptop shut when he climbed up on the couch, watching as they whispered to each other in the driveway down the hall, over the kitchen sink. There was one particular moment where he got home from school to find Maddie on the phone with his newly appointed grandparents. Sonic zipped forward to scramble onto the kitchen stool beside her.
Is that Miss Rosie? Can I say hi? I just saw the coolest thing in school about—
They had to go. Sorry, honey. Maybe another time?
Sonic's ears pinned down as he slowly nodded. He slid off the stool and went to go start his homework. That night, going down to get water, Sonic heard Tom and Maddie whispering in their bedroom.
I don't know.
He'll be fine.
But the poor kid.
He knew listening in was wrong. Still, he crept towards the closed door, pressing his ear against the wood.
We can't have him pick up on anything. He'll be okay.
I don't know. He's so sad, Tom. He doesn't know what's happening. Should we just—
We can't. After everything.
Sonic pressed his ear closer, and the door creaked under his fingers. He froze. The people behind the door stopped talking. There was a pause, filled with fumbling and hissing, and then—
Sonic, is that you, bud?
There was the sound of footsteps. Sonic swallowed, zipping away farther down the hall, just as the bedroom door opened. Tom stood there in the dark, face barely visible beyond him. Maddie was sitting stiffly in bed.
I'm just getting some water. Do you need anything?
Sonic said, trying not to let his voice crack. He took a step back towards the stairs.
No, but make sure to get to sleep soon. We've got school tomorrow.
By the time he went back upstairs, Tom and Maddie's door was closed and the room was silent. He went back to bed, but didn't get much sleep, their words tumbling around in his head, bouncing against tight-shut eyelids. By the time the sun had come up, he was tired, groggy, anxious, and angry. He pushed away his plate of waffles. He couldn't make eye contact. His vocabulary dropped to nothing but grunts. The car ride to school was suffocating. One he was more than happy to be done with, slamming the car door closed behind him. Jeremy Perkins was waiting on the steps, brows raised.
Whoa, fight with your Tom?
It's nothing. Just done with that jerk. Him and his jerk car.
Yeah?
And his jerk house, and his jerk dog, and his jerk job, and his jerk wife and her jerk job.
Sonic groaned and that vanished in a blue blur. One of the teachers standing outside the door rolled her eyes fondly. Jeremy caught up with him in front of the lockers. They were right next to each other, the result of careful untrim bribing, which was good most days until Sonic was in a mood. Leaning against the metal doors with his arms crossed, Jeremy shoved his things into his own, taking out his social studies textbook.
Sonic, is everything okay?
It's fine. Totally fine. Totally, completely fine. No problems here. I'm so fine with those jerks in their jerk house, and with their jerk cars, and their jerk jobs, and their jerk phones, and their jerky jerk faces.
Oh yeah, that totally sounds fine.
Come on, boys. Sonic, we've got a quiz, sweetheart.
I know. I'll be there in a sec.
His teacher nodded and let the door close. He turned to Jeremy again.
Sorry, dude. Just not looking forward to being picked up.
Got it.
And that jerk is going to pick me up.
Which jerk?
Maddie the jerk.
Ah, but what if you didn't have to go home? Come over today. We can finish the game we started last week.
That sounds good. That sounds great, actually. I'll text them.
Let me know what they say.
The boys separated, rushing to their own classes, one boy with squeaky sneakers, and the other a blue blur into a classroom. He texted them during one of the transitions, glad for super speed so the teachers wouldn't notice. At lunch he finally got a text back,
Yes, you can go to Jeremy's.
which left the supersonic hedgehog in better spirits the rest of the day until the final bell rang. Maddie must have already sent word because Jeremy's mother didn't seem surprised when the hedgehog hopped into the back of her minivan. Jeremy lived only a mile away from Sonic, just past the tree line. He was there at least once a week with Jeremy, a boy Sonic had met at baseball. The two became best friends by the end of Sonic's first week, mostly because Jeremy had been the first kid who didn't fawn over his super speed and shared his rapid love of guacamole, playing video games, practicing baseball strategies in the backyard. Today was a video game day, though, and the two dropped their backpacks and headed to the basement.
So what's your deal?
I don't have a deal.
People who walk into school like you did today have a deal. So what's really going on?
I think I'll be leaving soon.
What do you mean you think you're going soon? Going where? Like your family is moving or something?
No,
Then what?
it's just Tom and Maddie, they keep a lot of secrets right now. Not letting me go out, not letting me talk to anyone on the phone. The entire house has turned into one big secret that I'm not allowed to hear. And I think that the government might know I'm here.
You think? But that doesn't make any sense.
But it does. And if that happens, then I have to go. I don't know how long, but I'll have to go and hide until they lay off again. And I don't know when that'll happen. And I just want you to know, because you're my best friend, which I don't tell you enough. And you should know, because if I go and I'm not at school or practice, then at least
Whoa, Sonic, dude, breathe.
Sonic somehow found a way to drag in a deep breath. Jeremy waited for him to inhale and exhale a few times before settling closer to his friend, both of them cross-legged, knees touching.
Dude, the army isn't after you.
you don't know that.
But I do.
How? My Tom and Maddie are keeping everything one big secret.
And that royally sucks. But I don't think that secret is going to end up with you on the run.
You don't?
No, if that was true, you wouldn't be allowed to come over here today.
Maybe because they're letting me say goodbye or something.
And you wouldn't be allowed to go to school.
Maybe the principal knows something. Maybe the school is protected.
Okay, so what if it is? You definitely wouldn't be allowed to go practice or to do any of our games. Did they say anything about that?
Now,
In fact, Tom and Maddie had seemed enthusiastic about the game next week. They'd got new face paint and everything. Tom had even made a room on his overstuffed phone camera for all the pictures.
See, you're not going anywhere. Your parents are just being parents, which means that occasionally they'll keep secrets and act really stupid.
you think so?
Trust me, my mom once tried to surprise me with my sister with a trip to Disneyland. Got us all pumped up thinking we were going to the Everglades. I was ready to see my first gator. It was fun, but, sometimes parents keep secrets from their kids, and it sucks. But it's not the end of the world. It helps not to freak out thinking you might need to hide from the government. If that was true, we'd all be extra cautious and anxious all the time. On top of everything else we've got to be anxious about. And I'm already losing it over that social studies project.
So you don't think I'll...
Nope, I don't think you're going anywhere.
Tom was sitting on the front porch when he got home.
How was your day?
It was good.
Glad to hear it. And I'm glad you're here. Mom just called in pizza and I need to hit the hardware store on my way to pick it up. You wouldn't want to, I don't know, tag along, would you?
Yeah, I guess I can do that.
Hey, Blueberry. Perfect timing.
He felt his muzzle flesh. Her list of pen names was getting pretty long.
Hey, Maddie.
I can put your backpack inside. You were going into town with Dad?
Sonic nodded as he slipped the bag from his shoulders and offered it to her. The way they were referring to each other didn't go unnoticed, and it had his brain buzzing. Maybe Jeremy was right. Maybe it was a dumb, non-life-threatening secrets they were keeping. Maybe they were feeling guilty and being extra nice on purpose. It wasn't as good as just not keeping secrets, but it was a long way to assure his nerves.
Excellent. Can you stop by Pansy's too? I just got off the phone with Miss Rosie. A deer got inside her garden and ate all her tomatoes. She asked if we could pick up new plants and bring them by her house tomorrow after school. Can I count on you to help me out with that?
He nodded, finding it easier to match her smile.
No problem.
She reached out and ran a hand through the fur on the top of his head, rubbing his ears.
Thanks, baby cakes.
You could save some of those nicknames for Tom, you know.
He mumbled, muzzle warm again.
Trust me, she does.
Tom said, coming to our side as she straightened back up. He kissed her quickly.
We'll be back soon.
Have fun.
We will.
And they did. It was harder to be worried about dumb secrets when there were power tools to fawn over, and tomato plants to select and pizza to eat. He wondered how long until they could Tom, why they thought they couldn't just yet. Wondered but didn't worry. Later that night, Maddie sat on the couch, laptop open. Sonic had gone to bed 2 hours ago. They'd gone through the usual pay the toll routine for hugs after Parks and Rec, and then he negotiated for an extra hour, reading Percy Jackson in his room. Things seemed to be better now that they'd realized their too obvious hush-hush act was throwing a wrench in everything. He'd seemed much happier climbing the attic stairs that night than he had the night before. She'd watched the silver light of peeking through the attic door go dark as she made some tea. She'd intended to turn in for the night once she was on, but Tom had settled in next to her and had put on ESPN, so she'd stay on her computer. As happened more often than not these days, she'd gotten caught up in the conversations in the Facebook group for adopted parents she joined. The tea went cold on the end table. She was finally starting to talk herself into powering down when her email navigation pinged.
Tom, look at this.
What is it?
We've got an email from Judge Ramirez. We need to submit to home visits.
Come again?
Before we can finalize anything, the state needs to send out a social worker to see if forfeit parents. They need to talk to him too. Ramirez says she pulls a few strings to get them to assign someone local,
So someone Hill.
who probably already knows, or at least has something inkling, that he's not like other kids.
Oh, well that's good news, right?
No. Yeah? It is. It is.
But
But it means we've got to tell him soon before this person shows up at our door with a clipboard and a million questions about if we feed him enough vegetables.
whoa, relax, Mads. We knew we were gonna have to tell him eventually.
I know. I don't know why this is freaking me out all of a sudden. This is what we want and what he wants. It's good, all of it, but it just seems too big to just bring it up over breakfast, right?
Maybe, maybe not. Let's sleep on it, okay? We'll figure it out tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow.